Oh, you want me to be the perfect one. It's so easy to see why I push you away. Heaven inside my heart and hell in front of me. Oh, I walk the endless miles to where I need to be, and it's all the same. We're holding out for change.
Hi, everybody. This is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio. Nice to see you again. And you'll understand why I wanted to have the guest on today, because we've been talking about, obviously, health for a long time, and fasting, physical fasting, as one of the keys to regeneration and healing. Actually, not that the fasting heals anything, but it allows the healing power in the body to work with less obstruction. And that's been talked about for thousands of years and since before recorded history, I'm sure. And yet people who say, well, I have this really difficult situation and, I don't have any experience with fasting. None of the doctors I know anything about it. I have nowhere to go. Everybody considers it superstition that I'm going to starve to death, which is not very supportive. And what can I do? And there aren't very many places really to go. And so I was hoping that maybe Loren Lockman would come in and talk to us for a little while, because he's the creator of a retreat center, a wellness center in Costa Rica that does water fasting, and is one of the main water fasting places in the world that I know of that's done a really good job for many years. And I've heard that there are other programs there now, too, about yoga and things like that, so we'll get to ask about those things. But right now, with the governments of various countries in unison, almost forgetting to make believe that they're separate governments, have told people that they can't do anything in person. And so we want to find out, too, about the online options as well as when the in-person ones are happening. So we'll have a lot to talk about. It's going to go very fast. So welcome, Loren, and thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with Richard. It's great to be here.
So what I'd like to do in our usual theme of trying to include people who know nothing about what a fast is, or anything other than the medical system, I want to include all those people too.
Of course.
So it might be good to go back to as far back in the past that you want to, before you started Tanglewood. What was it that led you up to that? Whatever steps that you think are important and relevant, and then we'll talk about what you guys are doing now and some of the ideas behind how it works, that sort of thing.
Sure. I'd be glad to. Okay, well, I suspect that my story is probably not so unusual. Many of us who wind up doing something alternative to Western medicine started out, in fact, using Western medicine, allopathic medicine, and essentially were failed by it. It just didn't work. And what happened in my case was I graduated from college. That was a few years ago, and back in 1984. And so what's that, 36 years ago?
Yeah.
Within about 6 months, I found myself very sick. And at the time, all I knew, I was living outside of Washington, D.C. It's fairly conservative, at least from a health standpoint. Back then, pretty much all there was Western medicine, allopathic medicine. So I went to my health plan doctor and was promptly told that most of what I was dealing with. Now, I was later diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic sinusitis, systemic candida, and 57 allergies. And I'd never been allergic to anything.
Wow.
And back then, as you may recall, I mean, this may have been different perhaps where you were, but at least back where I was, medicine didn't recognize. I mean, I was literally told that chronic fatigue didn't exist, that my colon problems, irritable bowel syndrome, I just needed to be careful what I ate. And that actually worked really well, as long as I didn't eat any food.
Right.
But any food made me feel terrible. let's see, Candida wasn't recognized. I didn't know what it was. And so there were all these things going on. If anyone's not familiar with it, Candida is a yeast which occurs naturally in the gut. Most people carry it. The problem is when we create an imbalance in the system and the yeast takes over. Now imagine we're living in a body that runs on sugar, right, primarily. Mm-hmm. And you combine sugar and yeast, what do you get?
Was it alcohol?
Alcohol, right. So when you've got a systemic candida problem, you have essentially become a still. Yeah. And it's pretty hard to think or function very well. And so I had all these things going on, this chronic sinus infection that wouldn't quit, and then all these things I'd become allergic to. And everything was a problem for me. And what happened was the doctor told me that most of the stuff didn't exist, that allergies were easy. Just bend over and get 50 shots in my rear end. I like sitting down sometimes, so I thought that might not be the best option. And with the rest of it, I was literally told it didn't exist except the sinus infection. And of course, the sinus infection, they knew exactly what to do, right? Antibiotics. Most people listening probably recognize it if we look at the word anti against bio-life. Antibiotics kill bacteria. Now the problem is, and that sounds like a good idea to most people, the problem is that we actually depend on bacteria. We are, in effect, we are really bacteria buses. Our job is to move bacteria from point A to point B. There's roughly 10 times as many bacteria in the body as there is our own cells.
Right.
Okay, and we actually have a symbiotic relationship with these bacteria. So without the bacteria, we can't survive, let alone be healthy. We need them actually to function. And when we take antibiotics, what we're doing is we're actually destroying what is essentially the greatest part of our body's immune system. Okay, the bacteria are really nature's garbage men. So their job is to consume dead and dying tissue. And they're not the problem. They never are. Okay, they're attracted because there's a problem, because we have the garbage that they want, they show up. But I didn't know any better. I took the antibiotics as the doctor prescribed. Mm-hmm. And of course, what happens is immune function gets worse. And so after a year, I had seen no improvement whatsoever. The sinus infection kept coming back, stronger than before. I went through probably 3 or 4 courses of antibiotics that year, and it just kept getting worse each time. And all the other symptoms were getting worse as well. So I went and found another doctor. I thought, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And I got the exact same story. And a year later, I looked for another doctor, and I got the exact same story. And by the end of 3 years, I was worse than when I started. Nothing had improved. I was just getting worse. It was going downhill. And that's when I really thought about it and realized that allopathic medicine is essentially nothing more than a way to suppress the symptoms. And again, I mean, honestly, most people I know think, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, you don't want symptoms. We might as well eliminate the symptom, even if we're not eliminating the issue.
Right.
But the problem is that the symptoms are actually evidence that the body's cleansing or healing.
Yeah.
We need those symptoms to be there.
Yeah.
Right?
Very different approach, right.
So at that point, I thought to myself, that's all Western medicine is. Now, honestly, and I may step on some toes here, but I would say that's pretty much all any system is, whether it's allopathic, that is conventional, or alternative. It's really about suppressing symptoms. And a lot of people would disagree with me and say, well, this substance does this for me. This substance will heal me. This substance will cleanse me. And what I would say is that cleansing and healing are both biological processes, which means that they're undertaken only by the living organism, the body. And so I was lost. I mean, at the time, I didn't really know where to turn. What I thought I would do was maybe go back to nutrition. I thought, well, the answers have to be found within nutrition. Obviously, what we must have some impact. Maybe I'm making some mistakes. I couldn't imagine what mistakes I could have been making at the time. I remember I was recently out of college. I was living pretty much on pizza and beer.
Right.
And I couldn't even fathom how that could be anything but the perfect diet for me.
Yeah.
But it turns out it wasn't the perfect diet.
It had both major food groups in it.
Exactly. So what I wound up doing was making enormous changes to my diet. A little bit of study, I quickly realized that our digestive systems, our bodies in general, in fact, from the teeth and the way the jaws move and the digestive enzymes secreted in the mouth, the proportions of stomach acid, the concentration of hydrochloric acid in the stomach, the length, shape of the intestinal tract itself, we look nothing like animals that eat animals. And so I stopped eating animal products, and I gave up all processed foods. And I began to see enormous improvements just from that. In fact, in 6 months, I was so much healthier that people came up to me and started saying things like, "Oh my God, you look amazing. What did you do? Can you help my fill in the blank?" Whatever. Yeah. And that's when I started coaching people, helping people as much as I could. That was 33 years ago. Around the same time that I started working on my diet, changing my diet, I came across a book called Rational Fasting, which you're probably familiar with.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, written by Professor Arnold Ehret, way back, I think, in 1929, if I remember correctly. Ehret was a German who had emigrated to the U.S. and was, I don't know how much he was actually supervising fast, but he was certainly was a fan, something of an expert on fasting. I wouldn't call him, for me, not the end all and be all, but I learned quite a bit from him. I read this book though, and he's talking about people going weeks without eating.
Right.
And it made a bit of sense to me, although at the same time, it terrified me. I really didn't know whether that was possible. It sounded pretty far-fetched. I'd come to believe, like most people, I think, that if I skipped lunch, there was a chance I might die.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? No, honestly, I grew up fasting one day a year. I'm Jewish, only on my parents' side, both parents, and so we fasted every year one day. And I knew I could survive one day. I thought I would try 2 days, and I parked myself close to the refrigerator just in case.
Yeah,
I really didn't know if that was possible,
right.
And I did. I survived 2 days, and then I went 4 days, and then 8 days, and then 12 days, and then 16. And I worked my way up until I was fasting for several weeks at a time. And amazing things shifted for me. It was truly incredible. And at the time, this may be hard for some of your younger listeners to imagine, but back then, I didn't realize that there were fasting centers. You said something about us being one of the premier fasting centers. As far as I know, there's only really about 5 or 6 real fasting centers in the world today. There were more back when I started my journey, but I wasn't aware of it, right? Again, the part that might be hard for younger listeners to understand is that there was no internet. We had no Google. We had no YouTube. We had no Facebook. We did have a search engine of sorts. It was called the Yellow Pages.
Right, and you could go to the library and stuff like that too.
I never even thought of that, but I went to the phone book. There was nothing, right? There was nothing there. So I really didn't know these places existed. And I wound up fasting on my own and learning the hard way, and I made a lot of mistakes, and it was a long path. I wound up fasting way more than anybody would ever need to because I was learning as I went. And I wound up fasting, up until now. So it's now been 35-ish years or so, 30-plus years, 33 years, excuse me. I've been fasting now, that I've been fasting, but I wound up fasting more than 3 years of my life cumulatively.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. It's been amazing, but I probably could have accomplished the same thing with much less time and effort had I known what I was doing from the beginning.
But the only way to know what you were doing is to have done it. Right?
Had I known that I could have gone to an expert and been guided through the process, I might well have done that. I wasn't aware at the time. By the time I learned that, I felt like I already had enough experience. I didn't really need their help.
Right. Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry, say again?
There were some good ones in Europe in the earlier part of the 20th century, especially.
Yeah. And there were some good ones in the U.S. Back then. Unfortunately, most of them are gone. A lot of these guys, they were if they were alive today, they most of them would be up around 100 years old.
Yeah.
We just lost another one. One of my mentors died in Sydney, Australia, a couple of years ago. Dr. Alec Burton was an amazing guy, but he's gone, and so many of them, almost all of them, are gone now. But honestly, even when I learned about them, I looked around. I mean, Alec was an amazing guy. I loved him, and he had an incredible amount of knowledge, and was very generous with it. There were others. I won't mention names. I mean, there were several guys that were really great, and then there were some others that weren't really helpful at all. Weren't really very nice people.
Right.
My opinion, of course. But I looked around at the facilities, and most of them seemed to me to be kind of like a hospital, not the kind of place I'd want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided that what I was going to do was to create the best place in the world for people to fast, to give people the best environment, the safest, healthiest environment. And I also came to realize over time that my approach was actually quite a bit different. And it reminds me of something that Mark Twain once said. And I may not have the quote exactly right, but he said something along the lines of, "I never let my formal education get in the way of my schooling."
Other way around, I think.
Okay, let my schooling get in the way of my formal education. Something like that.
Formal schooling get in the way
of my education. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, people have said that the kids would be smarter if they grew up in a closet than the ones that went to school.
Well,
as long as there wasn't a TV in the closet, of course.
Exactly. I understand exactly that sentiment completely. Yeah, I think it's amazing to see what happens when kids come through programs like Waldorf or even homeschooling. With parents that are intelligent and actually give a crap.
Yeah, there's one called Not Unschooling now as well. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I have.
Dana Martin and other place. Yeah, it's pretty neat. The kids actually don't end up with no intelligence; they end up brighter than.
That's right. Yeah, they end up able to think for themselves.
Yeah.
I went to public school and we pretty much learned how to memorize stuff.
Yeah. Well, they're really doing that now.
Yeah.
I mean, from preschool up to PhD in medical school, it's all memorization of acceptable information, right?
Well, it's pretty much all about passing standardized tests.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, again, the system is broken. So if you have a broken system, then you're going to wind up incentivizing the wrong behavior.
And the teachers aren't allowed to really teach. They have to facilitate just like the doctors do, and they read off an acceptable checklist, and this is what you're supposed to do. I'm not trying to be negative about it. That I'm saying we need to fix that, but that's
absolutely, yeah. It really is analogous to the healthcare system today, which is the healthcare system is an absurd term for it. They don't do anything about caring for health. It's a disease care system. Yeah. And again, this may be, and I don't mean to be negative, but I suppose I'm a little bit gotten a little bit bitter about the whole situation. Because first of all, today, most people still think that the only place they can get reliable, valid information is from a medical doctor. And they don't realize that the doctors have the shortest lifespan of any professional in the U.S. Yeah. That medicine and doctors are the third leading cause of death. Officially, that's the official statistic. It's called iatrogenic disease. Unofficially, I would say they might actually be number one or two.
Yeah, doing better than that.
Exactly.
By Dr. Gary Null and Carolyn Dean, called Death by Medicine, right?
Right.
And they were saying about 1 million deaths a year in the U.S. back at that time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and of course, again, the reason I say that the statistics may not reflect the truth is because I'll give you an example. My father had multiple heart attacks, finally died of a stroke. Mm-hmm. And when I flew up from Costa Rica for his funeral 8 years ago, my little brother, who's a doctor, I said to him, there's another one of our family members, because all my grandparents and aunts and uncles and everyone who had gone was killed by medicine. Mm-hmm. Although not one of them not one of their deaths was labeled that way. Right. And my little brother said, "What do you mean he died of a stroke?" And I said, "That's right, he did. He bled to death, right, inside his brain." Right. And I said, "Would that have happened if he hadn't been on blood thinners? Would that have happened?" And my little brother said, "No, you're right."
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing that he acknowledged that was valid.
Yeah. Yeah, but unfortunately, I mean, this is often the case. It was the case with virtually every relative of mine who's passed away.
Yeah,
passed away
and
because
have another drug to get over the side effects of the first drug, and it just
that's right, exactly. But I don't think we're here tonight to bash medicine. It doesn't really need our help anyway.
No, I mean, well, there are reasons that system has evolved. The main one in the U.S. is that it was engineered as a system to control everybody's health and monopolize the drug business and everything.
That's right. I mean, it's over the last, I think in our lifetimes, because it's really only been 50 years that big pharma has been big. You know, it started out as small pharma. It wasn't really a big deal. I mean, just look at
the plans for it were started in 1910, and then there was something called the Flexner Report that said none of the other schools were of any use, and they just funded the drug schools.
That's right.
And it developed after that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's interesting, but way back, probably only less than 100 years ago, maybe around that time.
Yeah,
there were more naturopaths, osteopaths, chiropractors, etc. Then there were MDs.
There was a free market system for healthcare.
That's right. Yeah, and I don't know I think it was really the AMA at the time had the power, but I may be wrong about that. But they effectively eliminated all the competition. It's only chiropractors that have made any kind of a comeback.
Yeah, that's right. And
the rest are pretty much all gone.
You mentioned naturopaths, and they weren't trying to look like drug doctors at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot more natural, and even the regular doctors, the MDs, were allowed to try to figure out how to cure people.
That's right.
In fact, it was legal to say the word cure.
Right. And today, and again, I mean, there may be people listening that don't know this, but today it is illegal in the United States for doctors to recommend anything except that which is sanctioned by allopathic medicine. So they can't say, well, try this herb or try fasting. They can't do that.
No, anything that happens on something that's outside of the standard of care is going to put them in prison.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Or that's if they're lucky. Because over the last 10 years, there's been 30 or more have wound up with bullet in their head.
No, about 200 actually in the U.S.
Really? I guess I've only heard about 30 or so.
Yeah, you're living out in Costa Rica. You're not.
Well, that's true. I don't.
But that's true, and it's a strong incentive not to say anything unapproved.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's true. But so people who start to learn about that now, about the fact that that's not the best system in the world, they don't have a lot of encouragement from the mainstream to know what to do.
No, they don't. No, it's difficult, and and it's not just that there's not much encouragement. I mean, I have the honor of being listed in Quackwatch because Quackwatch, which is funded by the American Medical Association, run by one of their own, a doctor, who dismisses anything that's not Western medicine.
Right, and reports all these deaths from it. Right, usually.
Exactly. I mean, whatever they can say, they will. They've been sued multiple times.
Have you been checked by Snopes yet?
No.
Okay.
No, well, you know what? Honestly, I don't know. I've never looked.
Yeah, not that you checked.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've looked on all kinds, even in the so-called, the journals that talk about medicine from that point of view.
Yeah.
They're called the literature in this totally arrogant terminology.
Right.
They say all the people that have been damaged by all these quack therapies, and
right.
It probably says in there that fasting will starve you to death.
I wouldn't be surprised if it says that. Yeah. And that is it's a brilliant segue to get back to fasting, but that is certainly not the case.
Okay, so why is fasting any different than starving to death, other than that people survive it?
It's a great question because it's interesting. Even in the scientific literature, as you're probably aware, the 2016 Nobel Prize for Medicine went to Yoshinori Ohsumi for his 2+ decades worth of work demonstrating that autophagy, the process, literally means self-eat from the Greek, that autophagy happens and much more efficiently, as they say, in starvation, right? In the absence of having to process food. But we'll come back to that idea. But the difference between, so even the scientific literature talks about starvation when it's not starvation at all, and the difference is simple. In nature, there are floods and fires and droughts and freezes if you happen to live far enough north, and etc. And so there are times when food may not be readily available, and so animals store fat. And when we need about 2.5% body fat in order to survive. You've probably seen people 2.5% body fat. If you look at,
like they're all bones, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, if you've seen footage or photographs of people walking out of the concentration camps,
right,
back in World War II, that's about 2.5% body fat. That's what it looks like.
Wow.
So no one would want to look that way. That's what we need to survive. I mean, look at those people. They look like they're skin and bones. You think, how can they still be alive? Because they still have a tiny amount of fat. They need that to survive. Most people, though, we've been measuring body fat now for 14 plus years. We've measured more than 5,000 people. And the average woman is somewhere, that we've measured at least, is somewhere between 30 and 35%. And the average guy is somewhere between 20 and 25%, which means most people are carrying anywhere from 10 to nearly 20 times as much body fat as is necessary to survive. And the question is...
What's that, a year's supply of food, basically?
Well, for the average person, no. I mean, not at that size. At that size, it's probably, if you're 35% body fat, you could survive probably 8 to 12 weeks.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, maybe longer. I mean, there haven't been a lot of studies on this.
Yeah.
There was a medical run study where they took people who were 450 pounds or more. Uh-huh. If you have an international audience, I imagine you do, that we're talking about close to 200 kilos up to 210, 15 kilos, something like that. Yeah. And they fasted the average person, I think, for 7 months. So it is possible to go a very long time if you have enough reserves. And then the point I was going to make is simply that the body stores fat in order to be able to survive times where food's not available. Yeah. That's what it's for. That's why we have it. That's why we keep all this excess fat. Now, obviously, I mean, people have, in the U.S., where now most people are overweight or obese, this happens because of the way people eat and because of the quantity of food that they eat. But the fact that the body stores it at all, that happens on purpose, and there's a reason for it. And so when we're fasting, we're not starving. We're living on the fat reserves that the body's always stored for just this purpose, so that we can survive in the absence of food. The reason that this is beneficial is because when we live on these reserves, when we're not having to do the work of processing food, and we're resting as completely as possible, the body can take all of this energy that's been conserved and can use it to cleanse and heal. Okay? Now, starvation, I mean, in fact, really the way I normally talk about it is like this. You fast until you run out of reserves. If you keep going, you're not fasting anymore, now you're starving. Okay. So your starvation occurs where there's no fat reserves, and instead you're living on vital tissue. Right. That's starvation. Okay. Fasting always leads to a higher level of health and vitality. Starvation never does. Starvation isn't something we want to be pursuing.
Yeah. So do you agree with me that fasting doesn't cure anything?
I do, and it confuses people when I say this. Now, I usually start out by pointing out that juices and superfoods and green smoothies and a raw vegan diet and whatever else, I mean, paleo, anything you can think of, none of these things cures anything, right? Because, as I said earlier, healing and cleansing are biological processes. So they only happen because the living organism makes them happen. So we see things healing all the time. In fact, we literally see things that medicine says are impossible, B, miraculous, like they can't happen. And we see them over and over again. And if there's time, I'd be happy to share some stories with you. So some of the things we see are truly amazing.
I'd like that.
Yeah, but it's important to understand fasting isn't healing anyone. The body heals itself. And what makes fasting, when it's done properly, what makes it so powerful is that it allows us to get out of the body's way as efficiently and as effectively as we can. And so amazing things happen because we're giving this incredible, virtually infinitely intelligent with regard to its own needs. We're giving this amazing organism the best conditions and opportunity that there is in order to cleanse and heal. And so what we see is amazing cleansing and healing.
Wow. So when you were deciding you wanted to make the best place in the world for fasting, where were the places that you considered, and how did you come up with Costa Rica?
Well, honestly, it wasn't a tough decision. We didn't start in Costa Rica. We actually started in the U.S., although my plan was always to move to Costa Rica. As I think you're aware, Richard, and there's no reason that most of your listeners would be yet, but I'm also now just coming up on 29 or 30, 29 years living on fruit and salad. And that's a whole nother conversation. But living as on a fruit-based diet, I wanted to live in the tropics because here I have 135 or so species of fruit planted on site. We've got about 40 more varieties coming soon.
So the only thing you can't grow is like fruits that need chilling, like apples and stuff like that, right?
That's right. And actually, in Costa Rica, they do grow apples and peaches and plums and some other things, but they only grow them on the highest mountains, places where there's frost.
Okay. And
here we don't have any frost.
Is that frost seasonal on the high mountains, or is it kind of constant?
Well, no, it's seasonal. We're technically still in the northern hemisphere, and so I would assume. I mean, honestly, I've spent very little time in those places, so I don't really know the weather patterns there. I've been here now for 15 years, and have always lived. I've been in a couple different places, but I've always lived at about the same elevation. We're here at about 800 meters. So what's that? 2,700.
Yeah.
2,500 feet, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. And at this elevation, most days are in the 80s Fahrenheit. It will get to 90 sometimes. It's never gotten to 100, not a single day, not even close. Okay. Yeah. And it rare. I mean, I think the coolest it will get here at night. It might get down to as low as about 64, 65 degrees sometimes.
Sounds nice.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful.
This is kind of a sidetrack a little bit, but it's relevant to the environment.
Sure.
How's the government over there? I mean, I heard that they were trying to make laws that everybody had to have every vaccine that they recommended, and the usual things that members of the WHO tend to do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, the government here is very forward-thinking and far-sighted in many ways, but they have their blind spots. And unfortunately, with regard to medicine, I mean, most of the original MDs here started out learning medicine in American medical schools. Maybe places like Mexico and Argentina, but I mean, there was a time when there wasn't much available here locally. Now there are. Now there's schools here, but they still, I think, get most of their ideas about health and healthcare from North America and Europe, etc.
Yeah. Okay.
And hopefully, I mean, but it's interesting because they're so forward thinking in so many ways. We're in the process of creating a nature preserve and this big project around it. Everything is environmentally sound as possible. And I met with the power company to say, look, we want to do grid-tied solar systems. And they said, well, we'll work with you. We'll work with you if you want to. We can set it up that way. It's no problem. We can connect it for you. But just you should know that 100% of the energy that we offer is renewable energy. There's no fossil fuels. So in just the last 5, maybe 7 years or so, they've closed all zoos. No more animals in captivity. I mean, they've done a lot of things really, really well. They've preserved a significant percentage of all the land mass in the country is already, in nature preserves and parks. They're doing a lot of things well, but this is an area where they still have significant blind spots.
Yeah.
And I'm frankly hoping that we can help educate them. In the meantime, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not yet a resident, although I'm working on residency, and I'm rethinking that. I mean, it would be a lot easier for me in some ways, but on the other hand, if I'm going to be subject to this, now it may well be that you won't be able to come in as a tourist without certain vaccines, and so there may be no way to escape it.
And I don't know a good place to go right now.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, at this point, there may not be a way to, at least not officially, and there may be some, side ways to get around it. But I mean, I've heard of doctors who are willing to sign off saying you've been vaccinated when you haven't been.
Yeah,
that's one way. Obviously, they're putting their practice, their license at risk.
yeah,
And so, it's probably not going to be so easy to get that done. But it may well be that we're going to be casualties, and that for me, I would still do everything I could to help educate them, everywhere, because there are children and children yet to be born. That should
an indirect way that you might be able to do that is try to educate some of the doctors that have a good attitude, but they don't know. And
exactly, it's exactly my.
With their medical degrees, then they could educate the government.
That's exactly my plan. I'm actually going to take the information from the vaccine. What's it called? You've probably seen the
Truth About Vaccines or something.
Truth About Vaccines. Yeah, and give them to doctors, lend them to doctors to educate them.
Since it's already packaged and ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my thought. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's very hard to create that change as an outsider. But if we can get enough people within their system to say, hey, wait a second, what are we doing here?
Right. It seems like people have to do that in every country as much as they can.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people with credentials that are actually still open to learning.
Right. Well, yes. In fact, I think that's in many ways more true here than it is, and it's because it's part of their culture. I mean, here, culturally, again, Western medicine hasn't been around so long. It hasn't been such a big part of the culture here for so long. It's here now, but for a long time, the grandmothers would know which herb to pick to eliminate certain symptoms, and there's still this cultural idea that there's other ways besides medicine. And it's here. When I'm in the U.S. and I talk to people and I say, drugs are toxic, like all drugs are toxic.
Yeah.
People go, well, no, they're not.
They can't be their medicine.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people have these blinders on. Here, people go, yeah, of course they are.
Mm-hmm.
They still think maybe they're helping them somehow.
Yeah.
Right.
Certain kinds of
right.
But you're saying there are signs of consciousness in the population there.
Yes, I think so. I think there's still much more openness here, and I'm only hoping that goes all the way up the chain to higher levels.
Yeah, for sure. And is there enough consciousness so they're not fooled by the whole pandemic situation, or what's going on?
No. No, unfortunately not. They're still taking their cues. I mean, I think the WHO and people like Anthony Fauci, the NIH, and etc. They've done an excellent job of terrifying people. And of course, I'm sorry.
Incredibly good work.
Yeah, they've known exactly what they're. And again, I'm sure you're well aware. I know you're aware that this has been planned for a long time.
Yeah.
For a very long time, and that documentation that I've seen personally went back 10 years ago, and I know it's been planned even longer than that.
Yeah.
But in fact, I mean, this again. I know there's a lot of people out there that have trouble believing the truth, and as I know you're aware, the CIA way back in the 50s, I think, coined the term conspiracy theorist to try to make people who were actually onto the truth look bad.
It was mainly started after Kennedy got killed, because the conspiracy theorists were saying it wasn't just one lone crazy person that did it.
Right, of course.
It's a radical understatement, actually. But then they came up working with Disney Studios and other companies to provide the PR, they came up with this term conspiracy theorist, and it's worked great. I mean, not
perfectly
just
well,
almost for everything.
right? Perfectly well. Yeah, it's amazing how well it works, and it doesn't matter what facts you have; it makes no difference.
No. In fact,
I mean,
it works so well that they're using other buzzwords like that. Like, if you don't believe in what you're supposed to, you're also a racist. And that's a fairly new addition to it.
Right.
And everybody's afraid of being called bad things. And so
right. Exactly. Yeah, no one wants to be that guy.
So your project in Costa Rica is similar to in the US or anywhere else. If you want a better future, you somehow have to find a way to raise the consciousness of at least some of the people.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I would say that if we want to survive, and if we want to survive as free people, we need to pretty quickly work on raising the consciousness of as many people as possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's our main job, really, and I think the reason for the physical healing and the fasting centers and stuff like that is that besides that eliminating a lot of suffering and making life a lot more pleasant, it also makes the real inner consciousness work much easier.
It's amazing how the two. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like, we talk about holism, and for anyone that's not familiar, holistic practitioner theoretically is looking at the whole organism,
right.
and but still thinking about the physical organism, the physical body. Yeah. And I would say no. It's about the physical and the mental and the spiritual. It's about every single aspect coming together.
I mean, in a way, it's all spiritual if you want to put it in one category. It's just reflected into the gross physical level in the physical body.
That's right. Yeah. It's interesting because when I talk about when I explain to people that very idea that, look, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, then, great. So what difference does it make what I do to the body? Why does it matter? And you actually touched on it. You said it just a minute ago. It's about the experience, right? Years ago, I was a cadet at the U.S. Air Force Academy from 1979 to 1981. And one of the first things they told us when we got there is that because the government, taxpayers, had such a big investment in us, we weren't even allowed to ride on motorcycles. Not allowed to get on one, right? Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm sure you can still remember being 18.
Motorcycle too.
So someone tells you can't do something, you go,
that's
yes, I can. Right. So the very first weekend pass my best friend and I could get, we went up to Denver together and bought a couple of motorcycles.
Yeah.
And we were both taking flying lessons from the same teacher separately, but we both had the same teacher. He was a civilian, and he lived across the street almost from the main gate to the base. Okay. And so we talked to him, and he said, "Yeah, you guys, you want to?" He didn't care what the rules were. He wasn't in the military. He said, "You want to keep him in my garage? That's perfectly fine." So that's what we did. And I bought we both bought these used bikes. Mine was 9 years old, I think, and it was okay. It probably wasn't in the best condition. I probably didn't help because I didn't really know what I was doing. And by the time we drove them across the country a year later, I had all kinds of problems with mine, and I was having to stop and fix stuff and keep dumping oil in the crankcase, etc. And the journey could have been much more fun. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've done 4 long lecture tours in Europe, the longest one being 17,000 kilometers in 17 countries in Europe. And I've done it on actually just as old, it's actually older now, it's a 2003 BMW sport touring bike. It's an amazing machine, 17 years old, but it's been perfectly maintained. Yeah. And so the trips have just been a joy because I never have to think about it, right? And so this is the vehicle. The body is just the vehicle.
Yeah.
If we have to keep fixing the vehicle, how much fun is that journey going to be?
Yeah, it gets worse than people imagine when they're younger.
Honestly, I can only imagine. I mean, I see it with clients.
I know, but you can see it too everywhere around you.
All the time. Yeah, I mean, I'm working with, and it's it's happening younger and younger. I mean, I'm seeing clients now in their 20s that are dealing with things that I used to see people 20 years ago. Right, Tanglewood is now 23 years old, and so I'm seeing people now that 20 years ago, people 20 years older or 30 years older were having those issues.
Well, babies are getting cancer.
Right.
And there were people with sanitariums in the U.S. in the 20s and teens of the 20th century, and they couldn't find anybody with cancer. It was too rare.
That's right.
So they didn't know if what they were doing worked or not because there was no cancer patients.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very, very different world that we live in today. And again, I mean, I think we probably pretty well connected the dots, but in case anybody somehow missed it, or maybe you missed the beginning, the bottom line is that Big Pharma now controls every phase of Western medicine. I mean, from the time, think about medical schools. Big Pharma tells medical schools what they can teach. Right. And how it works is really simple. They say, we've got a $500,000 grant for you.
Yeah.
But we need you to be talking about this in this particular way. And you don't have to, because there's another school that could take this grant if you guys don't want it.
Well, that's the same way they control cities.
Exactly.
The government says you can have free money to develop your city, provided you're in line with Agenda 2030 or whatever.
Whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. So, and Big Pharma, and again, I mean, I'm guessing that your audience is not a typical audience.
Right.
But there's so many people that don't seem to realize something really simple. I mean, Big Pharma is not interested in your health. Healthy people.
They're not suicidal for their business.
Exactly. Right.
That would ruin it completely.
Yeah. I turned 59 a month ago. 5 weeks ago. And since I was 26, I haven't been sick a day. Not a cold, not a flu. I have 6 siblings. They all wear glasses. My vision's still better than 20/20.
Yeah.
And my point is that we can live at an incredibly high level of health and vitality if we're willing to do what we need to do. Now, a lot of people aren't. A lot of people say, well, I'm not willing to give up certain things. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Right.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. I mean, I tell people, look, you do whatever you want. Just don't stick your head in the sand. Understand the impact of your choices. And if you still want to make the choice, exactly. You need to know what you're doing, right? Yeah. But it's so important. Yeah, I mean, we can create this if we're willing to, but what's happening instead is most people are getting sicker and sicker all the time, and that's because the system is rigged. It's set up this way on purpose. In 33 years, I've taken no medications whatsoever. The average person my age is taking something like 5 different medications every day.
Or more, yeah.
I don't remember what the exact number is now, but I don't take any ever. And in fact, I mean, I have taken 2 ibuprofen in those years. And what happened was I fell 10 feet onto concrete and broke my hip. And after 4 nights of not sleeping for a minute, I thought I need to get some sleep. Yeah. So I took one, and I slept that night because I was relaxed enough. And I took one the next night, and then I threw the rest away. I flushed it down the toilet.
Yeah, so you've probably recovered from that pretty well by now.
Exactly, and that's it. Those are the only substances I've taken in 30-plus years. We don't need these substances, and they're not helping us. They're making us sicker. Yeah. But so fasting, what differentiates it from anything else is it simply empowers our amazing, incredible bodies to do what they were always intended to do, which was to heal themselves and to function at an incredibly high level.
Which makes people ask, since they're thinking in compartmentalized diagnostic terms, well, which things does fasting heal? Exactly, right. And my answer is anything that can heal will heal more effectively if you get out of your body's way. And that's what all fasting is doing. Right. So we literally have seen, we see pretty much everything. I mean, today I got a message from someone with a skin condition I'd never heard of before, but there aren't too many things we don't see. We work with people with all kinds of conditions, and we see all kinds of things healing. Now, it's important to understand, I'm not suggesting that every single condition can heal. Unfortunately, if you beat the crap out of yourself
every day for 50 or 60 years, your body may no longer have the ability to heal. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying it's possible that it won't be able to.
Right.
Right.
Right. Or if they come to you at the last minute when it's,
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I see that when that happens. We get these people who, say they write to me and they say, yeah, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor and I was told I've got 2 weeks to live. Can you help me? And I say, well, I'd be happy to guide you through the process, probably best via Skype so you can be home with your family.
Yeah.
But, this is difficult. And I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's difficult. Usually, if they tell you that you've only got a week or two to live, it's an uphill battle to be sure.
Yeah. It's not necessarily true, but it's also a strong self-fulfilling prophecy too. And there's that logical thing working against you, right? Once you've been told that.
I've always said that because people put so much confidence in doctors and medicine that it ought to be illegal for a doctor to tell someone when they're going to die.
Yeah, or what's impossible.
Because a lot of people are obedient, and so they just do what they're told.
Yeah, and you have the power to do that, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. So I always tell people, look, I don't care what they told you. It doesn't mean you have to die. People do recover, even from this. Yeah. Now, whether or not you will or not, I don't know. But, I mean, if they're telling you there's nothing they can do for you, you don't really have much to lose.
No, that's true. And probably if you are going to die, it's going to be a lot more comfortable transition.
Absolutely true.
Not struggling with a stuffed alimentary system.
That's right. Well, and just this actually happened a few years ago. We had a case where I get an email from two young guys in their 20s, and they said, Loren, my brother and I, our parents are all big fans of yours. We watch all your videos. I've got 500, I think, videos, plus videos on my YouTube channel. Yeah. They said, we watch all your videos. And 2 weeks ago, our father was diagnosed with a liver tumor, cancer in the liver. And the tumor was bigger than the liver.
Wow. And liver's not a small organ.
The liver's the largest organ in the abdomen.
Right.
Yeah, it's the largest organ, largest vital organ. And so it was a big tumor. And they said, they said, the doctor said he's got no more than a couple weeks to live. Can you help him? And I said, this is a difficult situation, to be sure. Just what I told you, but I don't see any downside. Unless money is tight and you can't afford my services, money's not an issue. That's not an issue.
Yeah.
So he fasted with me. He did not survive, but he was in incredible pain at the beginning of the process. Right. And that pain dramatically dissipated as a result of fasting. So he felt much better. He felt much more lucid. Because he started out, he was on all these drugs. He didn't need the drugs so much anymore, and was actually able to enjoy his last days with his family. It's a shame. Had we met, maybe 2 years earlier, a year earlier, maybe it wouldn't have had to happen.
Right. Yeah, but even if you know you're going to die, it's probably a good idea so that your body's functioning with less stress and whatever you need to go through is easy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I suspect a lot of people, I see it happening here. It's a different animal, but it's similar. We'll have people that come here and they'll say, I kind of hate to tell you this, but I made some really bad choices these last couple days because I knew it would be my last time, right? And I suspect a lot of people, if they thought, well, I'm definitely going to go, I might as well just do whatever I want and just enjoy it.
Right.
And of course, they just feel worse as a result of that.
Yeah. So how do you decide how long somebody is supposed to fast?
Well, at the beginning, that was really challenging. And frankly, I didn't know. And we would, at the beginning, in fact, when I started Tanglewood, people could book any amount of time they wanted to, or they could just come and we would go day by day. And they could just stop whenever they wanted to and pay however long they were there. It was kind of like staying at a hotel with an open-ended, itinerary. Right. And what happened after a few years, we went away from that. We don't do that anymore. And we don't do that now because we're usually full. And so we need to know in advance when someone's coming and when they're going. at this point, having fasted thousands of people with a incredibly high rate of success with many conditions. And I'll give you some examples. Medicine still says that if you have high blood pressure, hypertension, you will be on drugs for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Okay. We have had so far one case where a gentleman a person didn't complete his process of 4 weeks or more with below normal blood pressure, regardless of how I had started. Okay, until last year, we had 100% success with more than 400 people eliminating hypertension. No drugs, blood pressure below 120/80, which is normal blood pressure.
Yeah.
We had a gentleman last year who was in his 70s, and his blood pressure when he started was 167, I think, something like 160 or 172 over 120 something. Right, it was super high, or 110, something like that. He completed the process with blood pressure of 126 over 75 or 80.
Wow, that's not so bad.
Well, we reduced his likelihood of death by heart attack or stroke by about 110%.
Yeah,
I'd say those pretty good results.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a total failure to me at all.
No, not at all, not at all. Of course not. Much healthier, much safer. And in fact, if he continued on the program that I give everyone when they leave here, a written document that gets emailed to them that reminds, because while they're here, they're learning exactly how to meet all their body's needs as well as possible so they never get sick again. So they continue to function with the highest level of vitality, of mental clarity, energy, everything. And I want everyone to learn that, because our goal is kind of opposite of medicine. We don't want to keep them as customers forever. We want to send them out and say goodbye. I mean, most people benefit from fasting 2, 3, maybe 4 times, depending on how old they are in the situation. But then they're done. They don't have to do any more. If they just keep making great choices, that's all they need. And that actually works well for us. In 23 years, at the very beginning of the journey, I tried advertising in magazines. I think we ran 2 ads. We saw 0 business. It cost a lot of money. And I thought, this is pointless. This isn't the way to do it. Right. And we've never advertised again. What happened for the longest time was we stayed full based on referrals and people coming back to do their second, third.
Yeah, but how did you get the first patients fast enough, or clients fast enough to keep going?
Well, we didn't. I mean, initially it was pretty difficult, and I had a couple other things going on that were providing some income when I started.
Okay, good. Right.
I mean, I was very nervous about it, and this is one of the. In fact, when we started, we advertised that we would take. We were supervising fasts, and we also operated as a raw vegan bed and breakfast. And fortunately, we quickly got busy enough, and we just had amazing results with people. And so what happened was,
you didn't have to wait very long.
We didn't have to wait very long. No.
Okay.
Within, I mean, it might have been 2 years.
Yeah.
Within about 2 years, we had a pretty steady stream of people. We wound up moving from our first location, where I think at the end, with some renovations, I think we could accommodate 9 guests. And we wound up moving to a facility where we could take 18.
Oh, good.
And we kept that pretty busy. And then we moved to Central America, where we've been ever since.
How many?
We now have beds for fasting. Let's see. I have to do the math. We have 22 rooms. Technically, we could take 44 people. But we just last 6 months ago, we built 8 what we call little ranchitos. They're little bungalows, thatch roof, wooden walls, beautiful little spaces, open to the garden, and people love them. We only put 1 person in there. The space was actually designed to handle 2 single beds. But we actually, the original idea was to create a tent platform for some of the other events we do, not for fasting, but for instance, we have an annual fruit festival. Okay. We have yoga retreats. We have a couple of them planned for this coming year and early 2021. So we thought, people that are staying in tents might pay a little bit more and have a floor and have a roof, right? Because even in the dry season, when it's sunny all the time here, You
Yeah.
can't go in your tent after 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. You have to wait 12 hours to go back in there because it's just so hot.
It's too
And
hot.
in the rainy season, there's a lot of rain. So I thought we would build tent platforms, and then I thought, well, if we're building a floor and a roof, how hard would it just be to add some walls?
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, it's like everything else, it wound up costing a lot more than it was originally intended to.
Of course.
But we built these 8 little cottages, and they can house 2 people. I figured it's a lot more comfortable than a tent.
Do you have some kind of coolers in there so that it doesn't get too hot?
No, but it just doesn't get that hot here.
Because of the higher roof, maybe.
Well, I mean, again, because of our elevation, most days it doesn't get up above around 85 degrees most of the year.
Okay.
The hottest part of the year.
You were saying it was too hot after 6 in the morning or something.
In a tent.
Okay.
I mean, what
just a
happens?
confined space, I guess.
Yeah, it's a confined space, and the tent heats up, and it just radiates the heat into the.
Right.
I mean, the nylon doesn't do much. These have a considerably higher roof, but they also have thatch roofs. They're palm thatch roofs,
Yeah.
which don't heat. They don't heat up at all.
Right. So what seasons are dry and when is it raining all the time?
The rainy season is most of the year here. It's 7 months, and it runs from early May through November. But it's important to point out that it's not raining all the time. What happens most of the rainy season is it's sunny every morning, and then around noon, between noon and 2 o'clock or so, it starts to get cloudy, and then it rains in the afternoon or evening for an hour or two.
So
It's
anyway.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, it's, in a place that's warm, even if you get wet, it's not really a big deal.
Right. You usually survive that.
It's perfectly fine. Yeah, I actually, it's interesting because, again, I still ride motorcycles, and I thought how cool it'd be to live in a place that's got a 5-month dry season, like a long summer, right, to ride. Because normally, North America, you want to be riding in the summertime.
Yeah.
Right, generally speaking.
Yeah.
That's the most pleasant time.
Yeah.
And what I found here, even in the first year, I realized I like the rainy season better.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we still get plenty of sunshine. There's still plenty.
Yeah.
And everything's lush and green. Everything's gorgeous because we have plenty of rain, warm days every day, enough sun. So we have lots of flowers, and we have tons of fruit. And, it's the rain, of course, is necessary for all of that.
How's the wildlife? Do you have, people are concerned sometimes that going into the tropics that all these deadly animals are going to immediately try to eat them and things like that.
Yeah, we lose maybe 25% of our guests.
That's good. Yeah, and so that's above the profit margin anyway.
That's right. No, it's yes, of course. I mean, we're in the jungle. There are things, but honestly, I mean, so there's jaguars in Costa Rica, and they're amazing. And most people I know, including the 15 staff members who all grew up in the area, have never seen one.
Oh, interesting.
They're very solitary. They're not. One adult cat needs something like 1,000 acres to hunt.
Wow.
And you're very, very unlikely to ever encounter one, and they stay away from people. We do.
They like prey without weapons, probably.
Yeah. We do occasionally see smaller wildcats, but they're not dangerous to people. I mean, the only things that are really dangerous here are poisonous snakes and poisonous spiders, and we just don't see them. We just don't see them very often.
Interesting.
Again, especially the spiders, they much prefer to stay away from people.
Okay.
They don't hear, but they feel the vibration.
Yeah.
So when something which is, what's an average snake weigh, do you think? A pound or two?
Depends what type it is, yeah.
Something that's, I mean, yes, there are some large ones, but something that's on average 100 times larger than it.
Yeah.
They want to stay away from you.
Right. So you were saying if we had time, you wanted to look at some individual stories. What were you thinking?
Well, I didn't actually prepare anything, but
whatever you remember.
Yeah, I'll tell you a very interesting story. Years ago, let's see, it's probably been, so I think it was 4 years ago the gentleman was here, and probably 3 or 4 years before that he first contacted me online. And he contacted me online. This was a gentleman who had been dealing with incredibly painful arthritis since he was 18, and he was 45 at the time he came here. And so he contacted me at 42. This had been going on for 24 years. Yeah. He was medicated every day for pain, which made it hard for him to function the way he wanted to. And it took him a while to get here because he wanted to finish his PhD. He's now a PhD in brain science. I forget exactly. But he wanted to get that done first. And so he finally came, and he understood that you don't take any drugs while you're fasting. Drugs are, as I said, are toxic to the body. It's not a good idea to be taking these. You need to be. We're trying to get
was he on drugs up to when he came?
Every day, painkillers every single day for 27 years.
So a lot of people worry if you just stop those things, especially psychiatric drugs, but some other ones, they can really make a mess.
Yes, it's true. We know in advance what people are taking, and everyone is advised. I can't legally give anyone advice about what to do with their medications, but we tell them, I can tell them, this is a drug that you can't just stop taking. Or some of them you can. Okay, you can just stop this, or this is something you have to wean off of. And then people go and they figure
off before they come down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need to be off before you you can take it up until you get here, but you have to stop when you start fasting.
Okay.
So he understood that, and he began his fast with no painkillers, and he came to me on I want to say it was maybe the 5th day of his fast, with tears in his eyes. And he said, Loren, I don't know if I can continue this. I've never experienced so much pain in my life.
Yeah.
And I taught him a couple techniques to reduce pain. These are techniques that are used by chronic pain sufferers where, medication doesn't seem to help very much.
Right.
And I taught him this, and I kind of held his hand emotionally through the next little while. And he came back to me on day 10 or 11, again with tears in his eyes. But this time there were tears of joy. And he said, Loren, this is the first day in 27 years I have no pain.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. This guy was already following the diet that I recommend, the same diet that I eat. He was already doing that. Okay. It hadn't done anything for him. People, but an optimal diet, that's going to heal your body. No, nothing heals the body heals itself. A lot of people do get better when they optimize their diet. But that's because in every moment of our lives, our incredible bodies are doing everything they can to take their health and vitality to the highest level.
This was an American that you're talking about, right?
Actually, he was a Scot.
Scott, okay.
Yeah.
So 10 days and it stopped the pain.
Well, he didn't stop there, and he understood this, but we have people sometimes that say, well, if there's no pain. I actually had a woman once, we'll come back to him in a minute. We had a woman who came to me with multiple sclerosis, and she was a professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and she was an extraordinary woman, because if you can imagine, this is someone who'd never heard anything, born completely deaf, taught herself to read lips and to speak clear. If you've never heard, it's hard to know what you sound like. It's hard to correct your own speech, right? We learn to speak by hearing what people are saying, hearing our parents and siblings, etc. She'd never heard anything. She learned to speak well enough that she could teach a lecture hall in American history, right, at this university, and she could read students' lips from this lecture hall across the room, people a long way off. She was amazing. Wow. And she physically, the MS had not really affected her in any particular way physically, but it had affected her ability to think clearly. And so she was forced to retire early at the age of 52 or 54. I forget exactly what her age was. Okay. She was forced to, this was probably 11, 12 years ago. She was forced to take early retirement, didn't want to, but was forced to. Yeah. And so she came here to fast, and she came with a group. We actually, because we started out just outside of Washington, D.C., where the only deaf university in the U.S. is, Gallaudet University, we had a lot of deaf clients. I fasted probably 40 or 50 deaf people over the years. Wow. And it's a small, tight-knit community. So we wound up, I've been the most highly rated speaker for a large deaf organization of all their speakers. I was the only hearing speaker at a huge deaf event that traveled around the U.S. They invited me to come speak because they got such high feedback from deaf participants, some of their deaf members. So we had done a deaf retreat, and 4 women stayed to fast afterward. And all the other ones were going to leave. They were going to fast 21 days, which is typically the minimum fast that we'll do here is 21 days fasting, 7 days refeeding. It's a 4-week process. Our average stay is about 5 weeks, 26 days fasting and 9 days refeeding. And again, you asked me earlier, how do I know how long? Now I know from experience, having fasted many thousands of people. I basically know, okay, with this set of conditions, this is how long it will typically take. So I said to her, you should fast with MS at least 26 days, 30 would be better. And so she agreed to come for 5 weeks and fast 26 days. But her 3 girlfriends, and these women all knew each other, the 3 girlfriends were all going to fast 21 and leave at the end of the 4th week. And she was going to be here for an extra week by herself. Okay. So on that 21st night, she came to me and said, I want to break my fast tomorrow morning with the others. I said, why would you do that? She said, well, I came here because of lack of mental clarity. I've never felt clear in my entire life. It did what I wanted to do. And I said to her, you understand the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Now imagine, in fact, when I was a kid, there was a little plastic toy. It was a game. You had to put straws on this little plastic camel. Yeah. And, there's Jai making his way across the desk. Thanks, buddy. The loser was whoever put the straw in that made the camel's back collapse. It had a spring, right? Okay. A hinge and a spring. So now you took the things off, it would pop back up. Right. So I said to her, okay, so you had a broken back, it's popped back up, no more symptoms. That's great. Right. How many straws away from recreating that are you? I said, it could be 1 or 2 straws. That's a great analogy. Right. We don't know. So she said, I miss my husband. All my friends are leaving. I'm going to leave. And she did. She broke her fast. I mean, she was doing amazingly well. But I was concerned that she hadn't really given the body enough time to heal completely because we've seen this with MS before. And she couldn't afford any mistakes after that. That's right. And so 3 or 4 months later, she writes to me and says, now I understand what you were trying to tell me. Right. Symptoms have come back. And so she came back to her credit. She came back a year later and fasted again. And I haven't heard from her personally for a while, but during the deaf retreat, my mother, who is now 85, she visits every year. Okay. And she happened to be visiting at the time of the deaf retreat. And so they had been corresponding. They'd become friendly and were writing to each other. And I think it's been maybe 2 years since my mother's heard from her, but the last she heard from her, there were no symptoms, no recurrence. Wow. And I started, so the gentleman I was telling you from Scotland, he was pain-free after 10 or 11 days. Right. But he understood that his body might still need more time to finish healing. Good. And he completed a 30-day fast, spent 12 days with us refeeding, and went home. And I saw him a year and a half later. I was actually on a lecture tour in the UK and spoke. Actually, he helped organize events in Scotland. Right. And stood up and said, hey, the reason Loren's here is because of what happened with me. And I'm pain-free on 0 medications. And he still is 4 years later. And his joints work. And his joints work perfectly. Yeah. And we see the same thing all the time. Now, again, it's important to understand that fasting isn't like a permanent fix. It's a giant reset. Okay, so we're letting the body cleanse itself, clean out all the garbage, and there's a lot of garbage in the average body. Yeah. We're letting the body heal whatever needs to be healed. But if someone goes back and begins making the same poor choices they made before, they're going to recreate the same situation. And you're mostly talking about eating, right? Yes. Although, I mean, obviously, cigarettes, smoking, drinking, drugs, not getting enough sleep, not getting enough exercise, all these things are going to bring our health down quite a bit. Right. Yeah, but obviously, for most people, the biggest issue is diet. Does it ever help the deaf situation, or does that depend on why they're deaf? It depends on why they're deaf. So most, like all the group that I mentioned earlier that came to us as a result of one deaf client originally, these were almost exclusively people who were born deaf. And usually what happens, as you know, I'm sure there are 3 little bones inside the inner ear that are transmitting sound. They have to touch each other. And often what happens is there's a mechanical problem. That something's not, there's a missing piece or something, they're not connecting.
Right.
So these people aren't likely to hear without surgical intervention or, a very high-tech hearing aid, something like that.
Yeah.
But we had a gentleman probably 10 or 11, 12 years ago whose claim to fame was that he was the lead guitarist for the loudest rock and roll band in Melbourne, Australia for 25 years. And he'd lost 60% of his hearing.
Yeah, not surprising.
Got it back completely.
Wow.
In fact, so far, we've seen amazing things with every sense. We had a young man who had fallen into a rough crowd. He was 14 years old. He'd fallen into a rough crowd and was snorting cocaine every day and completely lost the sense of smell. Could smell nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. Fasted 14 days only, completely regained his sense of smell.
Wow.
I met a woman once. I was in Virginia Beach on a project many years ago, and I met a woman at the organic health store, the market.
Yeah.
And from a meter away, she could see that there was something in front of her, but she couldn't see what it was.
Okay.
Right. Most people who are legally blind don't see blackness; they just can't see well enough to function in the world.
Yeah.
So she could see there was some object there. We became friends, and I educated her about fasting, and she fasted, and she wound up changing her diet, and she created. So this woman who was legally blind and now drives a car. She hits a lot of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Oh, no, she doesn't. She doesn't wear glasses. She's got 20/20 vision, uncorrected vision. Yeah, it's amazing. Change your diet, fasted, change your diet, learn the Bates method of exercises to release excess tension in the eye. Getting hydrated goes a long way towards that. We haven't really had a chance to talk about that at all. Maybe we'll have to do another one of these.
Well, if you're open to it, we should do more because this is a really important set of subjects.
I'd be glad to. Yeah, listen, it's my goal is to educate and empower as many people as possible because the fact is most people do not need to be sick, and most people are sick. 80% will die of cancer, heart disease, or stroke.
Right.
And no one has to. No one has to. Everyone can function at an amazing level. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, there's a lot of, speaking of vision issues, there's a lot of people with, 2 of the big ones are glaucoma and cataracts.
Yeah.
Which they tell them for the cataracts, there's nothing but surgery. And
we've seen both of those conditions heal every time.
For the glaucoma, you have to be on drugs your whole life.
No,
or your eye's going to explode right away and you're going to go blind.
Yeah. I don't know if there's time. I'll tell you very quick. So, let me finish. So the blind woman, she wound up creating a center for African Americans with impaired vision in Virginia Beach. And this was many years ago. I'm not sure if she's still there. We kind of lost touch. She brought me in twice to teach full-day seminars. And by the way, I do travel and speak. If anyone's interested in creating something, I'd be very happy to come because that's awesome to be able to connect with people that way.
Oh, I totally agree. They just have to pay for your airfare and your lodging and and your time and stuff like that.
Well, usually I get paid to speak.
Yeah.
As well.
But also to ride on airplanes.
They've got to cover my expenses. Yeah.
Those have gone up a lot, or they're about to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she brought me in twice to come to the center to speak to groups of her blind clients that were going through her process with her. And as a result, I wound up fasting groups of blind people twice and seeing amazing things happen for each person.
Yeah.
Amazing things happen.
So what percentage of the blind people got some improvement?
Oh, 100% got some improvement. And not all of them got the same improvement that she did. Hers was amazing. And some of them didn't change as much as she did. Some did, but every single one of them saw some improvement, every one that we had there. Now, it may well be that there are people with other conditions. I mean, it's not like we had huge crowds. There were maybe 10 or 12 people there.
Right.
Each of them saw improvements. Every one of them.
So, I mean, what this brings up is the conventional, even the so-called natural conventional view of what's called nutrition is massively missing big pieces of the picture. Because, for example, in the arthritis story that you talked about, there's this thing called synovial fluid between the bones in a joint, right? And
exactly.
They say that you've got to build this back, which requires all these nutrients. And if you get them long enough, then it builds it back. But you were seeing it come back with no food. That's
right. And in fact, so one more quick story if there's time.
Yeah, there is. Sure.
Okay. So we had, I travel and speak quite a bit. I had done a full day seminar somewhere, I forget all the little towns, but somewhere outside of Phoenix, Arizona. Right? There's a whole bunch of jurisdictions that border each other.
Right.
And you know that part of the world pretty well, don't you?
Yeah, I don't live too far from there.
Yeah. So I'd done a full day seminar on one of those places, and about maybe a month later, I get an email from a woman that says, "Loren, I was at your full day seminar, and it was amazing, and I'm intrigued by everything you had to say about fasting. I'd like to try it, but I'm nervous because I have a magnesium deficiency, and my doctor has me on a massive magnesium supplement. And I'm fine as long as I take the supplement, but I'm pretty sure I heard you say you can't take any supplements while fasting." I said, "That's true. You can't take anything. There can't be any calories or nutrients. If there are, you're not actually fasting.
Exactly.
Just water. Just water." So she said, "Well, I don't, I mean," and it took me about 3 months to convince her that she'd be okay. And she finally came. She came and she fasted 21 days. And this is one, not everyone's willing to do this, but we have about 100 recorded interviews with clients on my YouTube channel. Yeah. And hers is one of them. Her name is Terry, and she still lives in Arizona. And she stopped taking the supplement. She immediately began to get symptoms of deficiency, magnesium deficiency started to come right back. So she stopped taking it. And again, I don't remember exactly. I think it was around 14 days into the process, into a 21-day fast. Yeah, all the symptoms were gone.
And what was her official diagnosis? What was
well, she had a magnesium deficiency.
Okay.
Now here's the thing. So magnesium, as you probably know, is the central atom in chlorophyll.
Right, but you don't get much chlorophyll on a fast.
No. But before coming to fast, for 3 or 4 years, she was living on a diet, the same diet that I eat, fruit and salad, eating a large green salad every night.
I see.
And my point is that even though she's eating a head of lettuce every single night,
it didn't help. Is the point?
It didn't help. She's eating tons of magnesium and still had a magnesium deficiency.
So this whole model of nutrition is really missing some big pieces.
Well, and let me give you one more example of just how big the problem is. So most people think that if you're vegan or vegetarian, you've got a problem, potential problem with B12, and you need a supplement with B12, right? Now, understandable, because B12 is manufactured by bacteria, and so it's found in animal products because, like our bodies, their bodies are loaded with bacteria. There's B12 being manufactured.
But what they found too is that big meat eaters and people like that also are mostly deficient in B12.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. 80% of the population is deficient in B12. Yeah. So the fact that someone's consuming tons of B12 doesn't fix the problem. And this is true across the board. In most cases, nutritional deficiencies, most people, obviously there's exceptions. And I don't know if you heard this news story. This has probably been maybe 10 years ago now, maybe a little more. There was a young woman, I think she was 22, somewhere in the U.S., and she was in the news because she had contracted serious life-threatening kidney and liver disease by the age of 22. How could someone do that? How does that happen? That's not typical for someone so young. Well, the story was that when she was 2, her mother took her to McDonald's. And she loved chicken McNuggets. And that's all she'd eaten for 20 years.
Wow.
Nothing but
a mono diet of chicken McNuggets.
Yeah, and what's amazing to me is that you can even survive that.
Yeah.
Right? As far as I know, there's not any actual food in there.
because I was going to say some kind of toxic exposure has to explain the situation.
Exactly. So here she destroyed these two organs of detoxification because they were constantly dealing with the toxins. So what's going on for most people with there's a situation where your diet's going to be deficient for sure. You try living on chicken McNuggets, you might not be getting.
They engineered the taste really well, though.
Well, absolutely. They've spent a lot of money doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But there are some people that are eating so badly they probably are going to wind up with deficiencies.
Yeah.
In most cases.
A famous guy that survived it for a month on an experiment called Super Size Me.
Yeah, sure. Morgan Spurlock, about 20 years ago, did a documentary called Super Size Me. If anyone's not aware of it, lived on only McDonald's. And what was interesting about that was, if you remember, before starting, you went to a doctor, a nutritionist. I forget who else, a trainer or somebody. I think there were 3 or 4 professionals that he was going to consult with every week through the process, including before he started. And before he started, they all said things like, well, your cholesterol will go up a little bit, your triglycerides will go up a little bit,
right?
But you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Two weeks later, the doctor and the others were begging him to stop so he didn't die. Right. After 2 weeks of this, and he completed the 30 days, and then his girlfriend, who was a vegan nutritionist, helped him recover. Okay. But it was interesting. So the point is simply that for most people, what's going on? If you're living on a terrible diet today, most processed foods, although they're garbage, they're fortified, so you're getting the nutrients you need theoretically. Yeah. It doesn't matter what's going in the pie hole. Yeah. Okay. What matters is what's getting to your cells. And most people are living inside bodies, inside vehicles that don't operate very well. Yeah. And that's the problem. So when we fix the functioning of the body, all of a sudden these deficiencies in most cases disappear.
Well, what's really interesting is the deficiencies disappear with no nutrition.
That's right. Because the nutrients the body needs, they were already in there somewhere.
Okay. And
it's crazy because, you think, fat-soluble vitamins, but water-soluble vitamins?
Where's it finding those, right?
I don't know.
There's some kind of alchemy going on.
There's something crazy that happens, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you were saying, when I said the prognosis for glaucoma and cataracts is really not good.
Well, so quick story. Years ago, I did a full-day seminar at a yoga studio somewhere on the Jersey Shore.
Okay.
And a client who was a yoga teacher had me come in and set it up with her students, her clients. So a 45-year-old registers to fast, and then when we're talking a week or two, we were still in the U.S. at the time, so this is many years ago.
Okay.
We're talking about her process. She says, "Oh, by the way, my mother wants to come." Her mother was 72 and hadn't been to the seminar, just trusted her daughter and just wanted to come along. And it was going to be a short stay. And I said, "Yeah, sure." So it turned out her mother had. Now she hadn't told me this. What she told me was that her mother had hypertension.
Okay.
I said, "Well, if she fasts long enough, she'll definitely heal it. We have amazing success."
Right.
Well, so she comes in and they're fasting. And back then, I hadn't figured out yet. Now what happens is every day there's a lecture. And then after the lecture, I have a nurse that takes everyone's vital signs. And then I go around and I talk to each person every day. So we're checking to make sure people are safe and talking with each person about what they're experiencing to make sure they're okay. Right. But back then I hadn't figured this out. So I would go room to room, which literally took all day because people wanted to talk, and I would answer the same question 14 times. And so I walk into their room, this 45-year-old and her mother, her right eye was completely swollen shut. It looked like she'd been punched in the eye, except it wasn't black and blue, but it was completely swollen shut. And I said, "What happened?" She said, "I don't know. I woke up with it this way." She said, "Maybe I scratched it on the pillow." I said, "Yeah, I don't think that's a pillow scratch."
Right.
Is there anything about that eye that's different from the other one? And she said, "No." And then she said, "Well, that's the eye that I have glaucoma in." I said, "Okay, and what have you been doing?" And she said, "Well, for the last 8 years, I've been putting medicated drops in my eye." I said, "Okay, I think we might be onto something."
Yeah.
I think what's happened is that all this time, this tissue around your eye has been absorbing this toxic medicated, again, medication's always toxic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Been absorbing these toxins into your body here, and now the body has a chance to finally do something about this, and that's what's happening.
Right.
And she, I feel really, really grateful that she was relatively easy. She trusted
didn't run out screaming or anything.
No. She said, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't seem concerned at all. That was great. It could have been a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
And I kick myself even now as I think about this. At the time, we didn't have cell phones back then, or we did, but they were completely different than they are now. In fact, I don't know if you remember, I bought my first cell phone in 85.
Yeah.
And it was actually attached to the car.
They weighed about 10 pounds.
And it was like a princess phone. It cost $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first bill was $1,000, and I'm going, I can't use this phone.
That's when they had long distance calls.
Right, well, if you remember, you paid for every call you made and every call you received too.
Yeah, exactly.
It was crazy. And the phone did have some very cool functions. It had apps, like you could make a call and you could receive a call.
Yeah.
That was it. So, we didn't all carry a phone around that had a camera on it, and it didn't even occur to me to go get a camera and take a picture of her eye. The next day, I go into her room to get her vital signs. Her eye is completely fine.
Wow.
It's not swollen. It's back to normal. She can see. And I said, oh, my God, it's amazing. She said, I know. I woke up this morning. It was perfectly fine. I said, is anything different? She said, well, there's no pressure anymore. It's gone.
You mean she was able to actually feel the pressure?
Yeah.
Before?
Yeah. She could feel it. And it was gone. And it was gone in days. This was under a week.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying that every single case of glaucoma would respond.
No, you can't predict. It's like it's not going to hurt you, and it may do really good things.
It will do really good things. It may or may not heal the one specific thing that somebody wants.
Right.
Because
it depends. Heal what your body thinks has to be healed right first.
Exactly. Right? Your body is intelligent, and it's going to do what's most important to your body.
Yeah. And you might need another, sequel after that sometime.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's I have a terrible joke I'll share with you. Have you seen Stevie Wonder's new piano?
No, I don't think so.
Neither is he.
That's
and the point, yeah, it is true. The point is that we don't need to see to survive. And so her body, I mean, oftentimes what happens is someone comes in, they've got a particular thing, whatever it is, they want to change, they want to heal. And the body might be thinking, yeah, but there's actually stuff that's critical to your survival that's way more important than that one thing.
So your body is the expert.
Exactly.
And you don't try to figure everything out to second guess the expert.
We don't. And, in fact, I mean, I take that exact same philosophy all the way. In other words, my philosophy is we don't manipulate the body. I mean, obviously, when I severed an artery in my wrist twice, two different places, and the blood is pumped every time a heart beats, it's gushing out.
Yeah.
You might want to interfere with that.
Yeah, well, the trauma care doctors have been spectacular, and in so many cases, they
trauma care is amazing.
They save people every day.
So. Absolutely, and I've used trauma medicine. I've been in emergency rooms on several occasions. Yeah. They've saved my life more than once. Yeah. And it's the only type of medicine I'll ever use again. Yeah,
so that people get confused sometimes, and they think that you're criticizing that when you're criticizing allopathic.
No, absolutely not. No, I'm only criticizing allopathic disease care.
Yeah, okay? Yeah, exactly.
That's it. I mean, allopathic disease care never ever makes anyone healthier. What makes it confusing is that by suppressing symptoms, people feel better, but they're not better. They're not healthier. Yeah. They're actually less healthy. And fasting actually allows the body the conditions to heal itself. And I think it's important for people to understand. I mean, I can imagine some people going, "This sounds crazy. This guy's a lunatic." It's hard to imagine this. But understand a couple things. First of all, it's estimated roughly 25 million animal species, including mostly insects, but 25 million animal species virtually every one of them, when sick enough or badly enough injured, will lay down and stop eating.
Yeah.
Fasting is nature's way of, and if you've ever seen a sick cat or dog, you've probably seen this.
Yeah, they're much smarter than people. And in some cases they won't even drink.
That's right. I mean, they won't drink if they don't need to. And most of them don't.
They know if they need to.
Most of them don't need to because they live on their natural diet.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, I really think hydration is so important that if you're up for it, I think maybe we ought to do a whole show on hydration.
I think that's a really good idea. I mean,
but I'll just give you a little window into it. I mean, think about the average person. So, just a couple facts: stool, bowel movements are on average 75% water, but the average person's eating food which is considerably lower in water than that. So every time they eat, right? Every time you eat bread, crackers, cookies, chips, whatever, you're taking water out of your body.
You're losing net water content.
That's right. And you can't make it up by drinking enough. You couldn't drink enough to make up for what you're losing. It'd be impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I've actually run the numbers, right? And we see it. We measure people's hydration levels here using sophisticated bioimpedance analysis. Most people are severely dehydrated.
Okay, and the electrical current flows differently through the body depending on water content.
That's right, because if something's dry, there's no current flow.
Yeah.
Right? It's called bioimpedance because body fat, which contains about 10% water, impedes the flow of current.
Okay.
So it's able to see. But anyway, we see the impact. We see what happens, and it's amazing. I mean, if we do have a chance to have this bigger conversation on this,
we should do that.
It's
there's
amazing.
Probably a few topics like that we should do.
Sure.
Because the point is to give people some kind of actual understanding, a little, not in the infinite detail, but the general principles of how the body works would be.
Yeah. Well, that's the cool thing. You probably remember Al Unser, AJ Foyt. Let's see who else. Those names ring a bell?
Sure.
Okay, they were the race car drivers of the 60s and 70s, right?
Yeah.
Some of the winningest drivers. I mean, but when I was a kid, I thought, driving a race car, how cool would that be, right? So I knew all these guys by name. I don't have any idea who the racers are, and I don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
But it's entirely possible that any one of those guys may not, I mean, it's probably unlikely that they didn't know how the internal combustion engine worked, but they didn't have to. They had a team of very well-paid mechanics to take care of the car, the mechanics of the car. Their job was to operate the vehicle. And, from my perspective, it's the same. We don't have to understand the inner workings. Our bodies are so complex. The truth is, I'm not sure if we ever will understand. We're learning all the time.
I don't think so. I think there are infinite levels, so that if you get down to where you can actually look at a single atom, that's like a solar system. It's got just as much detail on a smaller scale than that.
You're exactly right. And so my point is, we don't have to understand all that. All we have to know how to do is to operate the vehicle. If we operate it correctly, we have no problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I started to tell you earlier. It's kind of heartbreaking. My mother visits every year, as I said. One of my sisters, who's the closest to me, older than me. There's one younger than me, but the one that's close to me, older. She comes almost every year as well, and we were always very close. And we grew up body surfing together in the Atlantic Ocean, and we were both on a swim team. Strong swimmers. And so the first time she was here, I was like, "Hey, let's go body surf." She's like, "I can't. I've got problem with this." Or I'm like, "Okay, let's play frisbee." "No, I've got a problem with my hip." Whatever it is. There's always, I mean, unfortunately, she's 2.5 years older than me, and her body no longer works the way it used to.
That's what they call the golden years, right?
Yeah. Well,
when you fall apart.
That's right. Exactly. I'm now older than she was on that trip 6 or 7 years ago.
Right.
And my body works better today than it did when I was 18.
Yeah. And that's actually just normal. And the thing is that normal is miraculous.
Well,
not in the out of the ordinary sense. It's just constant.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
I mean, normal actually means average. So normal's.
Well, I don't mean that kind. I don't mean common.
It's what it should be.
There's a big difference between normal and common. And you can live in a society where there's no normal.
Right.
Because everybody's sick.
Right, exactly.
And nowadays, everybody's insane, too. So it's
pretty much.
Together.
Well, pretty much. I mean,
with rare exceptions.
It goes with eating toxic stuff, and it goes with taking toxic medications.
Yeah.
And it goes with getting vaccinated.
Yeah, and combine that with sophisticated mental, emotional indoctrination.
That's right.
Constant television treatments.
Constant.
And we have a few things that need to be solved.
No doubt about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we should work on that and do some more sessions. Before we stop, just review how people stay in touch with what you're doing, and even if they were interested in finding out more about remote sessions, because you mentioned those.
Yes, yeah, sure, yeah. Well, in fact, I mean, we, like a lot of people, I'm sure, we've had to move quickly to stay here because we're normally completely full. We're open now. We operate here in sessions, in 10-week sessions. Okay. And we're normally full. We normally have about 30 to 32, 34 people here fasting. We currently have one person here fasting, and she's here only because she was already in Costa Rica and wanted to come.
Okay.
No one can come into the country. Right now, the borders are closed. That's supposedly that's going to change on the 30th of June, which means really the first day to arrive would be Tuesday or Wednesday, the 1st of July.
Yeah.
And so
if they keep that.
If they keep it, and they keep changing it. So where I've been guiding people through the process via Skype for about 12 years now, but I limited myself to only a few people at a time because that's really all the people I could take on and be sure to be available for. And now I started reminding people, hey, look, if you're stuck at home and can't go to work anyway, and you want to get this done, this might be a perfect time to do it.
Exactly.
And so I've been working with 12, 13 people for the last couple months. Some finish and then others start. And so, and we're actually looking now at creating more of a program. The program was, I would call you and we would now it's actually a group of up to 4 clients, but we're actually in the process. It may be a little while before this all falls into place, but we're going to be, there'll be a series of daily emails that people will get with tips and reminders and inspirational stuff, and then a short video most days, if not every day as well. And we still have the calls, and they take their vital signs. We send them a spreadsheet. They fill it out with some basic information, and then we go over it every day.
So how much time during a typical day are you actually talking to them on Skype, I assume? Something like that, right?
Yeah, it's via Skype. Each group is a 1-hour call.
Okay.
So if you're in a group, your call may be from 7 to 8 every day.
And each person in the group gets to say anything that's on their mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is why we limit it to 4 people. I mean, honestly, for most people to talk about what's going on for them doesn't take more than 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, exactly.
So it does, then we look at all the numbers, and we depending on if they have a more sophisticated, some people have a bioimpedance scale as well, we can actually track a lot of very interesting things. But so we look at how these numbers are changing, what those things mean, and what they're experiencing, and what that means. And then usually, most days, there's at least 15 or 20 minutes for me to answer questions from anybody about anything.
Good.
And so the idea is to educate them there.
Are they having problems or issues, most of them, with being able to get the environment as supportive as it needs to be and comfortable and peaceful and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, obviously there's quite a range when people are at home or wherever. I mean, we had a young man last month. He completed probably 3-4 weeks ago, and he lives in Amsterdam, and he went outside of the city an hour or so and found a little cottage that he could rent inexpensively. This is a law student, and spent 4 or 5 weeks, I forget, spent there. So that was ideal. I have a woman right now who is she just completed her 3rd day of her feeding after fasting 30 days.
Okay.
And she's been at home. She's in her 50s. She's been at home with her husband and her grown children. I don't think they're all adults. They might be adolescents and older.
Yeah.
But no one really is very supportive, and so that's a little bit challenging.
Yeah, exactly.
It just depends on the situation.
The other thing I've noticed a lot of people run into is nowadays with the environment electromagnetically, they're being bathed in radiation from Wi-Fi.
That's true.
And it's hard to find even retreat places that don't have it.
I suppose, I suppose you're right. I mean, here we've never had Wi-Fi because I've been aware from the very beginning that Wi-Fi, electromagnetic radiation in general is harmful. Wi-Fi is particularly harmful. We're very fortunate where we are here. We have almost no cell phone signal.
That's a huge selling point for your retreat.
Well, and beyond that, I mean, if I can toot my own horn, I would say what happens here is people come all the time and they'll say things like, "This is the most beautiful place I've ever seen."
Right, and peaceful feeling, I would imagine. Too.
It is. We're on a state road between two towns. We have an average of maybe 1 to 2 vehicles an hour that pass by, and not many. And we put a big high wall up along the road so that most of the road noise, even though it's not much, when something does pass by, we don't really hear it.
And you don't have much aerial spraying there either, do you?
No, none. We've never seen it overhead.
That's the first place in the world that I've heard of that doesn't have any.
Really? Yeah. Well, it may well be that it's different. I mean, we're 3.5 hours from the airport, 4 hours from the capital, San Jose. Maybe around the capital, maybe that's an issue.
Yeah,
here,
it may just not be worth it where you are.
Maybe.
But they're spraying heavily over the oceans.
Are they?
Yeah. So that's a really big point.
Anyway.
And I would imagine that if you're having people fast at home, you would probably encourage them to hardwire their devices.
I encourage everyone to hardwire their devices anyway. If you're listening here and you own your own place, go to the expense of installing cables. So I'm sitting here at my desk. This is my little living room. I have a little patio out through right here's the French doors. On the patio, there's a jack where I can plug in a network cable. In this room, there's a jack where I can plug the network cable, and through that door is my bedroom where there's another jack where I can plug in. So I can take my laptop.
Where's it coming from? Have you got like a dish on the roof or something that's picking up the signal?
It's not a satellite dish. It's an antenna that's picking up from a tower where they're broadcasting.
Okay. Yeah, and then it's hardwired.
10 miles away, and then it's hardwired.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, so if people want to find out more about the fasting at home?
Well, probably the easiest way would be to go to our web. And you know what? There's several options. First of all, maybe we can provide links here.
Yeah.
Great. So you'll provide a link to my YouTube channel, to the website. You can go to the website. On the website, you'll find all the information. There's a tab that says pricing and booking. It's got all the prices. You can complete a registration form with no obligation. Some people think, but I'm not ready to pay yet. No, you don't have. You can just fill out the form, and I'll get back to you and tell you, okay, based on what's going on, this is my recommendation. Okay. Here's the available dates and times. You can also email us, info@tanglewoodwellnesscenter.com, or from the website, there's a contact us button. And I get those messages and look at them every day. Honestly, we've been so busy. I mean, I've been busier than usual on Skype. We have a lot of projects going on right now. We're using this time. I've got volunteers working on various things. I'm in the process of writing a book. We're in the process of setting up an online course. As I mentioned, we're in the process of revamping, enhancing this Skype coaching program and various other things. And so I don't always respond as quickly as I'd like to, but I will respond. And if you write to us and you don't hear back from me personally within 48 hours, feel free to write again.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, could have gotten, in the bulk mail.
It's easy to overlook it somehow.
Yeah. Sounds great. Well, let's do some more sessions. I think that would be
I'd be happy to. Yeah, my pleasure.
Important subjects to teach about.
Sure.
Okay, and hold on, and we'll say goodbye in the break here.
Okay.
Just a minute. Okay, you guys, I hope some of you made it through. That was kind of a long session, but I thought it was important to let it complete. I like to find people who are super experienced in certain areas that are important to everybody's life, or at least potentially very useful. And Loren Lockman is one of those. He's spent years and years supervising thousands of long water fasting cases, and I think most of them have been in person in Costa Rica, but now he's doing a lot more online because travel is difficult with the crazy governments, trying to shut down everybody's freedom of movement. You can find out more about what he does at tanglewoodwellnesscenter.com. And as he said, he's got hundreds of videos on YouTube. Apparently, they don't consider him a threat at the moment. And I've enjoyed and learned a lot from many of his videos. I have a little bit different approach in some way. I completely have found what he said to be important about raw food to be true. And I've been on 100% raw food for a long time, but I'm adding raw milk too. And when I talk to him offline, he's not violently, opposed to what I'm doing with that. That's not his experience, and he's curing everything in the world with the long water fast. So it's like, it's not broken. There's no need to fix it. I'm talking more about what happens after and how to build back tissue. And I think it would be great if people could do that on a little bit of fruit once a day or once a week or something like that. But I'm in one of the transitional middle parts, and I'm not at that point yet. So this is the way that I did it. But I agree with him that eating huge amounts of raw food roughage, like the other cancer center person recently on said, was not practical. And Loren said it's not either. And I found the same thing. It doesn't work well. So it's an ongoing investigation. And when I run into somebody with vast experience like Loren, it's irrelevant about them agreeing. I'm not just looking for people that agreed. I just want to learn from somebody so we can absorb some of their experience and we don't have to go through all the trial and error that everybody else has gone through. Because there's really not time to do that with every subject. So having Loren on is really valuable, and we've asked him to come back in the near future and do a show focusing around the issue of hydration, which is a big deal. I mean, people have been cured from all kinds of things by just drinking more water, and when you incorporate that into the rest of understanding of somebody like Loren, it gets super interesting. Once you start getting into these areas of natural healing, and you're not defending a label or a school of thought or anything like that, you just want to know what works and what's true. And Loren has that attitude too, and I really appreciate it. So he'll be back again soon with one or more sequels to tonight's show. Remember that we've got the Saturday show too, the Lost Arts Radio Live. It's at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern every Saturday afternoon. And we talk about something related to current events. Usually I don't have any guests on that show because there's so much to talk about, but sometimes we do. We've had some great guests recently on there, Sheriff Mack and various doctors who have a lot of perceptive insight and useful things to tell you, and all kinds of other people. So whether it's just me or talking with them, we try to make those shows directly relevant to what's going on in the world and what our options are in dealing with that. So hopefully you'll find that useful. And then a half an hour after that ends, we have the Planetary Healing Club meeting for people that want to take these things farther and get into a supportive, interactive, live environment, which we do every Saturday. And we can talk about anything because it's a closed environment. It's not getting censored at all. It's just for members. The little tiny dues help us keep going on the air, which I greatly appreciate. And we can talk about information related to health or consciousness tools that I've been working on for a long time and how they help you transform your life and actually get into practical steps of how to do that, which affects everything in your life, your relationships with other people, your energy that you have available for your work and other parts of your life. Very valuable, I think, and I don't know how long it'll be available like it is now. So if you find that that's something that might be useful to you in accomplishing what you want to get improved in your own life, take a look at planetaryhealingclub.com. And if you have questions about them, just email them in to me or use the contact form on the sites. And if you have discretionary capital and you can help us keep going or expand into the projects we've got on hold, because the funds aren't there yet. If you want to help with that, donate to our work at lostartsradio.com on the donate button, or lostartsresearchinstitute.org on the donate button there. That's our nonprofit that's running everything basically and keeping it going, and then we'll build the school when we have the money to do that. And we also have a Subscribestar platform page at subscribestar.com/Lost Arts Radio. And remember, you can also subscribe to us for free at brighteon.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio. That's Brighteon, BRIGHTEON.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio. And that's a non-censoring video platform that has agreed, to let us keep going, even if we are not able to keep visible on some of the other major platforms, although we're trying to stay on everything right now. Want to hear from you about any show ideas or feedback, comments, questions, anything like that. You can email me directly, richard@lostartsradio.com, and I'll read everything that comes in and reply as possible. So thanks for joining us, for visiting with Loren Lockman. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. So anyway, have a good rest of the day or good night, depending on what part of the world you're in. Thanks for spending the time with us, and take good care of yourself. Learn everything you can to do that. It helps everybody else in your life. And have a good week, and we'll see you next time.
Introducing Lost Arts Radio on Subscribestar.com. Just go to subscribestar.com/LostArtsRadio to find our rewards program, offering 10 different giving levels starting at just $5 a month. We offer incredible value for any rewards level, from extra monthly interview videos not available publicly to subscription-based Planetary Healing Club videos once, twice, or 3 times a month, to private counseling sessions with Lost Arts Radio host Richard Sachs, to tech help with me, Doug Diamond. We even have one option where you can be the star on Lost Arts Radio as our guest on a specially produced show just for you. We conduct an interview with you and broadcast it to our growing network and listenership. Our Subscribestar levels are one of a kind and offer great rewards for any budget. Please help support Lost Arts Radio. We can't do it without you. With increasing censorship on many of our channels, we really need your support today to keep doing what we're doing. As Richard says, we're not even at survival level yet. Lost Arts Radio has 3 weekly shows. Lost Arts Radio Live each Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, which is a live stream currently on multiple platforms in case we get banned from some of the larger ones. Right now, we're on 2 YouTube channels, Facebook Live, Periscope, which is Twitter, Twitch, and DLive. You can access these broadcasts by going to www.lostartsradio.com/live for all the links to those channels. The Planetary Healing Club meets right after Lost Arts Radio Live at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Saturday nights. And our Sunday show with guests airs at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday nights on our Blog Talk Radio channel, our YouTube channels, Facebook pages, and on Brighteon. Be sure to sign up for our free email list just in case we do get banned on big tech's platforms. It's just a matter of time, really. They don't like the stuff we talk about, and they do not want the truth out there. In fact, they have already attacked us numerous times. Join our free email list so we can let you know where we are and how to access our shows. The sign up button is right on the top right on most pages of our website. The best starting point for all things Lost Arts Radio is our main site, lostartsradio.com, where you can find the hottest news selection videos that we curate just for you. Those are on the homepage and added to daily, as well as articles and breaking news about information you really need to know. Our show archives, the 10 most recent shows, are right on our homepage, as well as our Blog Talk Radio page at blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio, or just click the All Things Radio Show tab right on our website. We're in the podcast directory on iTunes, and all of our shows except the banned ones are on our YouTube channels at Lost Arts Radio and at Diamond Disc. Our Brighteon page is really taking off, and we often have editors' picks videos right on their homepage. Visit brighteon.com/channel/LostArtsRadio. On our site, you can also access our free listener forum as well as sign up for the Planetary Healing Club, which is just $25 a month, where you get private access to a one-on-one interaction with host Richard Sachs and myself and the other club members who participate live. More info can be found at planetaryhealingclub.com. We're providing solutions in there to make the world a better place. Come join us. Stay tuned, because up next, you'll get to hear a really great song by an independent artist that we're doing our best to support. Go to lostartsradio.com/music for the full list of all the great songs and bands that we spin on our audio-only podcast shows. If you're in a band and want to submit a song for consideration for airplay on Lost Arts Radio, visit my website at diamonddiscaudio.com for more information about the music placement, mastering, and mixing work that I do. Thanks again for listening to and supporting Lost Arts Radio. We love having you as part of our family to learn, experience, and grow with.
Oh, you want me to be the perfect one. It's so easy to see why I push you away. With heaven inside my heart and hell in front of me, oh, I walk the endless miles to where I need to be, and it's all the same. We're holding out for change. Yeah, our world is a mess. The planet's in distress. Oh, and everyone's so afraid of making mistakes. With heaven above our heads and hell below our feet, oh, I walk for countless miles to a tune that pushes me, and it calls out my name. Oh, it's time for a change. Yeah, it's time for a change. Oh, you say I've done you wrong, still you wrote me this song. Now still you stay away. You haven't called me for days. With heaven inside my heart and hell in front of me, oh, I walk the endless miles to where I need to be, and we're all the same. Oh, now we're holding out for change, and now we're holding out for change. Oh, it's time for a change.